Ahoy, brave sailors, welcome back to the deck of PT-104, where Commander Murray Baker and his valiant crew are taking a well-deserved break to refit and prepare for the monumental changes on the horizon. The Pacific Theatre is heating up, with both sides ramping up their efforts and throwing everything they've got into the Solomons. The latest experimental branch of boat crew has released, and it's shaping up to be the ultimate PT boat experience. And here's a few reasons why. We have carriers and strategic targets. The battlefield will be expanded with the addition of carriers and strategic targets, including airfields. For me, that's the most exciting part because in my first playthrough, I sort of fantasized that PT-72 went off and sunk a carrier, but now we will have the chance. But before we get into that, let's go through the dev blogs one by one. They have been a few. The devs are very active in the development of this game, and they are expanding it seems, further than their original scope, and it seems to be because of us loving the game, telling them what we want, and them being open to those changes. So the first of the changes will be a rework to the air system. There will be zones of control. These zones of control are projected by the strategic targets and airfields placed near the enemy bases. While you're in the zone of control, you're more likely to be attacked by certain different types of aircraft and in higher intensity if your threat level's high, which I think is great. And I think it might minimize the ability for the Japanese to chase you anywhere with their air wings. If you're outside a zone of control, perhaps they won't find you. That will be great. They can be a little bit annoying to constantly be attacked by air wings. It'll help you visualize when there really is danger. Make sure you keep a few cans of ammo when you're in the zones of control. The carriers in boat crew will be limited to light or escort carrier varieties, with only light carriers being risked in the inland seas. They are tough targets. They will have many planes to throw at you through their zone of control, also in direct combat. Allied naval aircraft will assist you in engagements that happen within the Allied zones of control. So we will also have friendly airfields, and they will scramble fighters to help us. That is a great concept, and one that was mentioned in the comments a few times in my videos. You can see here in the dev blog we have the Rougeau class light carrier scrambling its zeros. Moving along to the next dev blog, there was only a short time between these two, and someone pointed out that the Rougeau carriers tilt their masts before they scrambled their flight operations. And the devs changed that straight away too, so I love how receptive they are to those little things that we want to see. I cannot wait to get one of these ships in my sights, and I'm interested to see how much of an escort she will have. Will she be just swarming with destroyers? Or will we have an opportunity to catch one alone? Time will tell. To go along with the addition of the zones of control, the Allied forces are getting the P-40 Warhawk, or the Kitty Hawk. Much loved airframe, and that will provide close air support when you're in the Allied zone of control, or you can also be awarded it as a call-in. And I think that happens when you have high threat levels, you get bonus call-ins. I received a P-38 call-in by being super good with depth charges. So P-38s and P-40s represent the US Army Air Force's zones of control. The Casablanca class carrier will be the Allied Naval zone of control and strategic target. Similar to the Japanese counterpart, she will operate both fighters and dive bombers. Those of us aware of the nuances of naval history would know that a Casablanca never really launched dive bombers, but for the interests of gameplay and balance, the Casablanca will launch Dauntless dive bombers and Wildcats, which I think is fine. We want a game that's fun, it acknowledges history, but then is also artistic and lets us experience it in our own way, and I'm fine with that. The Casablanca will be an absolute powerhouse with the largest number of weapons to be held by any ship in the game, boasting an impressive AAA complement, as well as 20mm cannons, dual 40mm bowfills all over, and a 5-inch dual purpose mount. Strategic targets will be relatively powerful battle groups, so that answers our question from before, without any baggage. That is, landing craft or small boats. Each side can only have one such battle group on the map at a time, so that means we'll be fighting big ships just to get to the prize. They won't participate in assaults directly, but will stay off the shore within range to provide air cover. As the player, your goal is to sink enemy strategic targets wholesale. Friendly strategic targets will need to be defended, as the AI will target them with special assault groups that focus on seeking and killing ships. These assaults will distract them from landing operations, and since they will be particularly beefy groups, they will create large delays for invading forces. Strategic targets are created by a hidden bar, which will be configurable in campaign settings. So there we have got confirmation that we will be able to tailor the campaign to our own desires, and that is fantastic. Absolutely great. So yeah, I'm really excited about this. We'll also have the ability to use more than one boat at a time. So you can run multiple boats, outfit them how you like, set presets. You can have your own real little devil boat fleet. And that would mean I don't have to kill myself to find out what it's like to sail in the prototype 81 footer, which I've only done for a short amount of time. Really interesting. So our PT boat crews will be able to get experience from all over the board. We've already mentioned the Key 84, but it will be coming in 3 different variants, with one variant being armed with 30mm cannons, which I'm sure will absolutely shred your boat if you get hit. The changes to the way that the air attacks will work will give you some leniency if you're aware, but they are changing how fast and how the aircraft behave, so they may present a bit more of a challenge. We're also getting the number 4 class subchaser, counterpart to the PC 461 class subchaser from the Americans. It will fill the same role as the number 101 minesweeper, but it's got dual Bofors guns. Okay, so yes, Bofors is interesting. I know that this ship was fitted with the, it's like a clone of the 2-pounder gun, which I guess weight-wise is okay. But in the interests of making the game more interesting, they've given Bofors. Yeah, the pom-pom is less effective than the Bofors, that is true. Okay. In the boat crew universe, where the IGN is a lot stronger and more competent, they managed to capture multiple shipments of dual Bofors guns and arm their ships. I'm down with that, that's fine. Number 4 will be a medium-range AA powerhouse that is held back by its low speed, making it wise to engage at longer range. Bofors positions can be picked off. Then we have the Jingay class submarine tender. Joining the fight, she's a rather heavy ship with a similar displacement to the Nagara class cruiser, using fewer of the same heavy guns. Some additional lower caliber guns and a decent number of AAA, being the first ship in the game combining the small caliber cannons with the full-size ship autocannons. So she'll have a mixed armament, she'll be deadly at close range and at long range. Main weakness will be her speed, which will be quite slow, and she will be lightly guarded, if at all, possibly with supply submarines. I'm liking these changes. This is going to make the open water fights much more dynamic and immersive, I think. Stumbling across a fleet that is actually competent in defense will be quite the challenge. Currently, you only really fight fleets when they are fighting each other or they're attacking the base that you're stationed at. The next devlog was on the 15th of August, just yesterday, my time, balancing existing torpedoes. So big change to the torpedoes, and I think they were needed. The first change will be to increase the top speed of the Mark 8 torpedo, which I found to be only good against stationary ships, because the lead required to get a hit at long range was quite substantial. All torpedoes will be getting a large reduction to their splash radius, which I think is good because I was able to double tap destroyers sitting at the dock together by the splash damage. Previously, yep, the splash damage was big enough to hit a ship and pretty much destroy every component. Now, this might be seen as a large nerf to torpedoes, but I think with the other change coming, the next one I talk about, it will balance out really well and make the game seem more realistic, rather than waiting for a certain health level for the ship to capsize or sink. Acoustic torpedoes will be getting a workover. Currently, they're very accurate. They're like laser torpedo, so you just drop it in the water and it'll find someone to kill. They're going to make it so that it's more of a skill shot. The tracking will correct poor aiming or unlucky shots. And they are going to replace the Mark 21, which really didn't exist as it is in game, and they're going to replace it with the Mark 28 torpedo, which is still fictionalized, but was a torpedo that did see service. It was quite effective in service, but it wasn't a Hail Mary torpedo, and crews often overestimated just how good it could be. The Mark 28's guidance capabilities have been severely nerfed, making it behave like the Mark 8 that can turn a near miss into a hit, rather than like the Mark 48 that time traveled back to the current period. That's very funny, mate. To compensate, its damage and top speed are both greatly increased, and its cost is greatly reduced, making it more available. But yes, because there is a large gap between what you want, what you can afford to use, and then the next torpedo, which really costs as much as most of the weapons on your boat put together. So it's going to make it more available. That's good. If you want torpedoes that are better for tracking, the Mark 24s and the Mark 27s are still in the game. They still have excellent tracking, and they still have a lot of them, but they are much weaker torpedo, and you do need to fire them in spreads, or they're better for smaller targets. And I think to compensate for the decrease in damage, we're going to see an increase in the knockback effect from torpedoes and bombs, pushing force proportional to the strength of the weapon. So we could really send someone flying with a depth charge attack. For a game about patrol torpedo boats, we have a suspicious lack of torpedo-related updates. In fact, every torpedo that's in the game has been there since early access started 2 years ago. The first change will be the Mark 14 torpedo added to the game, a more expensive torpedo that combines the strengths of 2 entry-level torpedoes that we have, the quick acceleration of the Mark 13 and the stopping power of the Mark 8. It also has a magnetic detonator, meaning it will explode in the proximity of allied or enemy ships, so you won't be able to sneak them past the tender to try and blow up someone else. They will explode near any ship. The addition of the Mark 15 is an oversized torpedo meant for destroyer use, so big and heavy that the PT boat can only carry 2 of them at a time. The Mark 15 compensates for this heft by dealing massive damage to any ship it successfully hits. That is a carrier killer for sure. And there's not really much else to say about that torpedo. It's a big shaft of steel and steam, packed with explosives, meant to take out the big boys. What else have we got? Ah, yes. The one that I am excited for as well. Magazine detonation, secondary explosions, and damage control. Opposite ends of the same system. Secondary explosions is meant to abstract representation of flooding, and magazine explosions, ruptured fuel lines, and internal fires, with the damage control aspect being the crew's effort to mitigate these. It's meant to create positive feedback. The game will periodically check each damaged but alive component and cause either an explosion or heal them, with the chance of the positive outcome being proportional to the health of the component. Right, so if something has 64% health, it has a 64% chance to heal itself, and a 36% chance to take damage. That's pretty good. So once you get over, say, 50% damage to a component, you're more likely to start having compounding failures, which is great. That's a great way of simulating it. Each faction has a damage control system bias that can be configured once we add that system to the campaign settings. Good, good, good. US ships get a flat 20% effective health bonus, whereas the IJN get nothing. And this is to account for the superior damage control of the USN ships. Contentious. To break up the symmetry of this system, every time damage is taken, there's a chance for a large or massive explosion to be triggered, with the appropriate damage and radius. Ooh, could we get blown up too? There is also a larger chance for an explosion to trigger whenever a hull part is completely destroyed. These explosions are strong enough to severely damage, if not outright sink the ship, though they will rarely have enough reach to hurt you unless you're right on top of them. And that seems to be my method, so that could be quite dangerous for myself. You should keep an eye out for merchant ships full of highly volatile fuel and ammunition. We will do. A part that is heavily damaged is more likely to end up destroying itself, whereas applying light damage to a part will give the enemy crew a lot more chance to fix it up. We intend this mechanic to delocalize damage a bit further, while giving high impact, low fire rate weapons like torpedoes an advantage in sinking ships. Conversely, automatic weapons will be more effective in sinking ships, but it will be harder to sink them if they're in a pristine condition with massed Bofors fire. That's a good change. So yeah, if you damage the ship first and then hit them with your lighter weapons, you're more likely to do something catastrophic than if you just went in with the light guns first. That makes a lot of sense. The crew's being overwhelmed by the amount of tasks they're being given, or the damage is just too much to bear, rather than poking holes in them until they sink. In addition to the mechanical changes, we have made some changes to the current enemy aircraft roster, improving the weaponry of the Zero variants. And that pretty much sums up the major changes. I will link the store page so you can see those dev blogs for yourself. I highly encourage you that if you own the game or you want to play the game, get involved, let them know what you think, because they're highly receptive to it. And we are really building the game that we want at this stage, together. Now, as tempting as it is for me to want to jump right in and hunt these carriers, I'm tempted to wait for the stable branch for it to hit the main branch before we continue the saga of PT 104. Let me know what you think, because I'll just do what you want. I'm here to serve.
Amphibious tank.
Commander Tyrael, out.
Whoa, take that. Triple kill. Multi-kill.
Playing some Unreal Tournament here with the rocket launcher.